Great to be with everyone. And, you know, when you talk about honoring our troops, I think it's important to really begin with this. It's that our troops believe. Our troops believe in this way of life. That's where it all starts. Why does a serviceman or woman step forward, raise their right hand? It's because they believe in this way of life, this incredible way of life. There's a tendency now to look at what we have and say, well, of course, that was destined. It was never so. At the very beginning of this country, this was a radical idea that we could live free. This was the era back in the 18th century of divine right of kings and queens and aristocracy, courts. The idea that we could be self-governing, nobody gave us a chance. You know, Great Britain, we believe, and I believe we're right, we won our independence. But you know, after 8 years of fighting us, and they were involved in a world war, Great Britain just packed up after Yorktown and they sailed back. They said, you know what? They're going to beg for us to come back anyways, and we got a lot to do in Europe. So let's just leave these ragtags alone for a while until they beg for us to come back. That never happened. Never will happen. Because we are the shining hope for mankind. We are this belief for all of our challenges and for all of our wars, and we have both. There is no better hope for mankind than right here in the United States of America. And that is worth fighting for. That's why our servicemen and women stand up. That's why they raise their right hand. That's why they go forward into battle for us, and they never waver. And that is something, when we talk about honoring our troops, we start there. We start with preserving this incredible way of life. Each and every one of us, and we have a role to play. But we never forget the freedom, the opportunity, and that's what it means to be an American. And when we think about that, my message is going to be very simple for you today. I think that at this moment, rediscovering basic principles is very important to us. What does it mean to protect and defend a republic? What does that mean? And you look back at the earliest writings in our country. You see Thomas Paine, James Madison, Thomas Jefferson. And they talked about this freedom, this opportunity, and what it means to protect it. What we envisioned was peace through strength. Peace through strength. Right now we have neither. And we need a new president. Peace through strength. We don't need to have troops, ground troops all over the world. We don't need to be the world's policemen. What we need to do is recognize our strengths. On our best day, other countries want to be like us. And I don't care who. You take a look at Vietnam. We have some incredible Vietnam veterans here today who gave everything for the cause. And when they came home, they got spit at and not respected. They gave everything for us. And look at Vietnam today. They want to be like us after all these decades later. They recognize when you unleash freedom what that means. Peace through strength. We still need the world's strongest military as a deterrent because we know history. We have read history. We appreciate. We respect the annals of history. And right now we have neither. We have peace. We do not have peace, and we don't have strength, which is why we need to rediscover this. In the Congress, I'm an advocate for this. National security establishment reform. Thinking and acting differently and strengthening our country. Core strength. The ability to strategically maneuver as a deterrent for those who would do us harm. A peaceful people that leads by example, but make no mistake about it. You shoot at us and you kill Americans, there is no place that you can hide. We will hunt you down and we will kill you. You know, you think about our earliest motto. Our earliest motto was, don't tread on me. And what was implied, if you don't tread on us, we won't tread on you. This is the kind of leadership we need now. It's very possible. When we hold true to our basic principles, this is what we need to bring forward. What does it mean to keep faith? Well, that's pretty resonating these days. What does it mean to keep faith with our veterans? I just mentioned our Vietnam veterans who never lost faith in us. And now we're showing that faith by showing these veterans who come home how important they are. I mean, candidly, we will never be able to make it up to our Vietnam veterans. We just won't. But what we can do is commit ourselves to never again will we ever do that to any veterans, and we will honor our Let's have all our Vietnam veterans stand up. All our Vietnam veterans, please stand up. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Keeping faith. Keeping faith with our veterans. Staying true to our principles at the founding about freedom and opportunity. Staying true to our veterans. Disturbed. Outraged. Disappointed. Arizona. What's going on? Unacceptable. These are words. They're true. But we have to put actions behind it. I served in the United States Army with General Shinseki. He is an honorable man. But it was time for new leadership. Now, to be sure, it's not just General Shinseki. He had issues exercising his command among the top echelon of the VA. My experience has been when you need to move in another direction, it's time for new leadership. Now, we're going to bring on a new secretary, but you should also know 10 days ago we passed a bill in the United States House that makes it easier to hire and fire top-level executives at the VA. We need to empower the new secretary, whomever it may be, coming forward. We need new leadership all the way across, and we have increased the budget for the VA by over 20% in the last 3 years. Even in an era, by the end of this year, where we'll have cut the deficit by 2/3, the annual deficit by 2/3, thanks to your great work. Even in an era of that, of fiscal responsibility, we have increased the VA budget by over 20%. And you know, my point to you is this. The money was necessary, but it's not just about money. You know this. It's about policy too. We've got to change the way we're doing business in the VA. And what we need to do is recognize that we have competent local doctors right in our communities. And if the line is this long at the VA, and we've got doctors in our communities where we can send our vets to, then why not just commonsensically? Why don't we just reduce the backlog? And that's what we need to do. Keeping faith. Keeping faith. Keeping faith with our veterans with regard to health care. And also this, our veterans fought for us. They're not looking to be coddled. No. They need some transition assistance. And we're working that. We've got the most generous GI Bill. Thank you. Thank you for that. We've got transition with regard to training, VOTEC, for our building trades, and for those that want to get in that, we have this. The biggest problem we have is getting the word out. Only 1/3 of the veterans who are eligible for the VA even sign up. And only about that many use their GI benefit. This is what we can do. We can reach out. We can reach out to our veterans who come back into our community and make sure that they understand their benefits. We're working hard to do this. Keeping faith with those who've served. I'm going to close with this. I've talked about meaning. What does it mean to defend the Republic? What does it mean to keep faith? Let me close with this. You know, when a young man or woman is killed in the line of duty, that's a moment when we're searching for meaning. Because, you know what? There's nothing we can say or do is ever going to fill the hole in the family. It just isn't going to be so. I'll tell you the story of Chris Gibson, a young man who served with me in the 82nd Airborne Division. 21 years of age. This was Fort Bragg, the 82nd Airborne Division. It was the fall of 2004, and Chris came up to me in the mess hall, and he said, "Sir, I understand earlier in your career you served at Fort Drum, the 10th Mountain Division. I'm thinking about re-enlisting so I can go to Fort Drum, so I can only be a couple hours from my hometown, Peyton Post, which is right near Corning." He said, "You know, that would give me an opportunity to hunt with my buddies on weekends, chance to be near family." What was Fort Drum like? I told him what a great, incredible place it was to serve, and he re-enlisted. Chris re-enlisted. He raised his right hand in a time of war and said, "I will continue to serve." And he was due to go to Fort Drum, except for unexpectedly a couple weeks later, my unit, our unit, was alerted and deployed with about 48 hours notice to go to Iraq to reinforce our forces in anticipation of the first ever free election in Iraq. And in the frenzy that was the outloading, I got the word that came up through the chain of command that Chris, he wanted to delay his report date to Fort Drum. He couldn't see to it. I mean, he just couldn't see that his buddies would go off to war and he wouldn't be there with them after all the training that he'd been through. Well, I met with his non-commissioned officers, my sergeant major, and we sat down and we had evaluated that request, and in the end we honored that request. I sent word by way of the Pentagon that Chris Gibson was going to delay his report date until 90 days after we returned from that tour duty. You know, Chris was somebody who was there for his buddies every single day. And his last day on earth was no different. That was the 16th of February of 2005. We were battling a very tough insurgent cell with Al-Qaeda connections, near daily contact, IEDs, RPGs, RPK. And on the morning of the 16th of February, Chris had been up all night long. He was on duty. He was guarding. He was on watch. And by 5:30 in the morning, his watch was over. He went into his sleeping bag, and it was his turn to rest. And a gunfight broke out about an hour later. Now keep in mind, Chris could have stayed right in the sleeping bag. He had finished his duty for the evening. His duty at that moment was to get rest, to get ready to fight later. He'd have none of it. He popped up out of his sleeping bag. He grabbed his weapon, his battle kit. He moved right out. And in this gunfight, he went. And we had an armor-piercing incendiary rounds that came through the cement, hit the butt of his weapon, exploded, went into his chin, moved to the back of his head, and his brain was swelling. We did everything we could to save Chris Gibson. But in the end, he perished. He died of his wounds. The next day, as I was preparing to call his parents, and as we were getting ready for the memorial service, I learned that Chris was born on the 4th of July. And that struck me, because this young man was red, white, and blue to the core. And so at a moment like that, how do we find meaning? That empty hole in that family. There's no meaning there. But there is meaning in this. I want to end where I began. There is meaning in this. He fought for something. He believed it. He believed in this way of life. He believed in the freedom and opportunity. It is our mission. It is our mission to those, the living, those that are still with us walking the earth. It is our mission every day that we rise, that we commit ourselves to live into our God-given potential, to give it everything we have, to make our community stronger, to make our nation stronger, so that this would be a land and we would be a people worthy of that sacrifice, and worthy of the sacrifices of all those who laid their lives for our freedom. That's where we are as one. We are as one. We are the hope for the world, and we do this together. It's important that we rally today to commit ourselves to that, and we say we remember always. We remember those who laid down their lives. God bless each and every one of you. Thank you.